What's up guys, welcome to a new video on Linux basics, and throughout this video I'm going to teach you guys the basics of Linux, just basic Linux commands, how to navigate the file system, create files, etc. So in this video you're basically going to learn basic Linux commands. I just said how to navigate the Linux terminal. I know it's very challenging for newbies and people just trying to learn how to use the command line interface, how to create files and directories, and also how to move files and directories. Yeah, so stick around and then you get a lot from this video. So before we continue, I'd like to explain the concept of the CLI and the GUI. The CLI meaning the command line interface, and then the GUI means the graphical user interface. So when you hear the CLI, it's basically a way of interacting with your computer, operating your computer using the terminal, right? You're just typing in commands without any graphical stuff for you to work with. And then the GUI means the graphical user interface. It basically means interacting with your computer using graphics. Like, let's say you want to create a folder, you right click and then you see a folder, you right click, put the name of the folder, and then you see a folder icon, right? You just see icons and then graphic templates, etc. But with a CLI, you don't get any of those, right? So yeah, and I'd like to explain how the CLI works, right? This is actually a high-level diagram, just explaining the basics. But a user directly interacts with the shell. That's a terminal rather. The shell talks to the kernel and then the kernel to the hardware. But this is going to be a little bit challenging for most people to understand at first, especially starting out. So I'm going to do this simple illustration to just give you that understanding. Yeah, so right now I'm on my desktop and I'd like to create a folder. Right, so to create a folder, you can either use the CLI or the GUI. The graphical user interface is just the default way people go with because it's the easiest, right? So you just come here, you right click, you go to new, and then you go to your folder, right? So currently I'm using a Windows machine, but I'm going to explain this concept in Linux very soon. So you now give and then you name your folder. Let's say DevOps 202, that's the name of my folder, or let's just say 202, and then I hit enter. Now I just created a folder called DevOps 202, right? I right clicked, went to new, and then created the folder. So this is just using the graphical user interface where I can see graphics. I can drag and drop the folder wherever I want. Very simple to use, yeah. But for the CLI, right? All right, so this black terminal you can see here is just a command line interface, right? And to create a folder on your desktop with your CLI, it's very straightforward also, and you can do that by typing in commands. You don't have to right click and all those other things. So you just type in commands in the terminal, and then it creates the folders for you. So the command now is just you telling the PC what you want to do, telling the system what you want to do rather. So you can say mkdir, that's I'm telling the computer now that I want to create a directory, make directory name DevOps. Yeah, if I hit enter, you see here that DevOps just flew in, right? Because it works very, very fast. You can see now this is the CLI and then this is the GUI. So you can see DevOps just flew in. And if I want to check this on the CLI to see if DevOps really exists, I can just say dir just to list it. But right now this is just Windows commands, right? You can I'm just explaining the basics of how the CLI works and how the GUI works, right? So you can see DevOps was created, DevOps 202 was created, and if I want to delete these directories, right, I can just say rmdir DevOps 202, and you see that DevOps 202 just flew out, right? So it's just the concept of how the CLI works and how the GUI works, right? We are trying to achieve the same thing, but you can use two methods to achieve them. So let me just remove this other directory, rmdir DevOps, and you can see DevOps is actually gone. Yeah, I hope you understand the concept of CLI versus GUI right now before we proceed. Yeah, so back to the slides, right? So how the CLI works, the user basically interacts directly with the terminal, right? And then the terminal directly interacts with the kernel. I explained this part, one of my videos, and then I'll drop a link in the description for you guys to watch. And also the kernel talks to the hardware. But I hope you guys just get the basic concept. That's just the purpose of this video. Yeah. And now how the GUI works, right? It also brings out another abstraction, right? Applications talk to the shell on behalf of you, the shell talks to the kernel, and the kernel talks to the hardware. So it just adds an extra layer above it, which makes things a little bit slower on the GUI and then faster on the CLI, as you saw previously. So on Linux, now back to Linux, right? On Linux, we have different Linux distributions, right? We have Debian, Ubuntu, Gentoo, Arch Linux, etc. We have different type of Linux distributions, over 100 plus, right? And then I'd like to explain now the advantages of the CLI over the GUI. And the first is efficiency and speed. And as you can see, this MIG over here, the CLI users often, we call them the power users. I'm a power user. I prefer using the CLI most of the times compared to the GUI. I spend most time on the CLI than the GUI. So it's very fast, and then it's resource efficient. It's very resource efficient. And then scripting and automation. It's easy to script using the CLI and automate some repetitive tasks, right? And then for remote access, you can directly log into your machines that use CLIs, right? For Linux, it's very simple, just SSH, etc. So right now, let's go to the sweet part of this video, and that's basic Linux commands. So we have a lot of Linux commands, right? And from this point on, I'll just switch to my terminal and let's start writing command. Let's start typing in commands. Yeah, so right now this is my Linux terminal, and yeah, this is basically how the terminal looks on Linux. I really love this color. And now to just explain some tiny details of this guy. It basically looks odd at first when you start working with it. Yeah, it looks a little bit odd when you start working with Linux. So you see here, right? You see John, and this section here signifies my username, right? John at. Then the next section here signifies the name of the computer I'm logged into. Alright, that's why I can just see a random hash, a random name here, CRPC383. This is just my computer name, and then this colon here is a separator, and then the tilde that you can see here signifies that I'm in my home directory. I'll explain that concept shortly. And then you can see this $sign here. $sign means I'm signed in as a standard user. I'm signing in as a standard user. Whenever I see hashtag there, that means I'm signing as a root user. Right. So now let's start typing in commands. The first command I normally like typing into Linux is ls, right? And ls is basically a command that you use to list the contents in a directory. Use that to list the contents in a directory. And then the next command is clear. I use that to say, let's clear up my screen. So I say clear, it clears up my screen. So yeah. Now let's still take a look at the next command. And right now I would like to create a file. And to create a file, you can just use the command touch and then the name of the file. Let's say dev.sh. So I just created dev.sh, and that's why dev.sh. That's why I could see that there was no output. If I ls, you'd see that dev.sh was just created. So I'll clear up my screen again, And now to create a folder, is mkdir, then the name of the folder, let's say learn-devops. And then if I ls to list again, you see learn-devops was created, right? Learn-devops was just created. So let me clear up my screen again. You just saw that we created a folder called learn-devops, right? So there's always this misconception with beginners, and they're like, how we just created a folder and then we want to understand what's the difference between a file and a folder. So it's similar to everything on Linux, even to the real life. A folder is just a container, right? A folder is a container that basically holds objects called files. And then you can see this is a folder. And in Linux, you can call folders directories. Don't get confused. They mean the same thing. Windows normally call it folders, Linux will call it directories, but they are still the same thing, right? And to create a folder again, the command to create a folder is mkdir, that's make directory. That's to create a folder or a directory, and then touch is equals to create a file. So ls is just to list the contents of a directory, list the contents in a directory, list all the files in the directory, right? Yeah, so we just created that folder rather, called learn DevOps. So let's say we want to go into that folder called learn DevOps. We now run a command called cd learn DevOps, and then you hit enter. Now I want you to take note of this part, right? You can see that this just changed to learn DevOps, which means you are inside the learn DevOps folder or directory. So if you ls, you'd see that this learn DevOps directory is empty. There are no files in it. So I want us to create two new files now called fisher.sh and then bob.sh. So to create a file, as I said, is touch fisher.sh and then bob.sh. So this means that you can actually create two files with the same command, with just one command rather. So if I hit enter and I ls, you see I have two files here, bob.sh and then fisher.sh. Now a bonus tip, right? In Linux, you are going to be very careful of how you type in your capital letters and your small letters because it's case sensitive. So I just created a file right now called fisher.sh, and let's say I want to create another file again, and I say, okay, let's say touch fisher.sh, right? This file is still going to be created, and if you ls, you see there's a fisher.sh and then there's a fisher.sh. They are very case sensitive, and Linux treats them as two different entities, right? Two different entities because this is capital and then this is small, right? So if you can see, yeah, that's how it works. So you're going to be very careful of the commands you type it. And also if I say touch now and I say capital T, touch, let's say new underscore file.txt, you're going to get an error. So you can see touch command not found. Let's see sudo apt install the name, also see sudo apt install touch, but obviously it does not exist. I don't think it exists rather. So you can see it failed because this command does not, it's not found on your PC. So right now, if you ls, you still see the three files you created. Now to the next command, and that command is to delete a file. So to delete a file, you can just say rm, then the name of the file. Is it fisher.sh? Yes. And then if you ls, poof, it's gone. So you just deleted the file. So let's delete these two files. We don't need them, obviously. We're going to create more later. So if you say rm bob.sh and then fisher.sh, you can see if you ls, they are gone, right? Rm is a command used to delete files, or just delete files and folders rather. So that done, let's move to another command, and this is a very interactive command rather. It basically prints out the input you give to it and just prints it out on the terminal. So if I say echo let me wrap this in quotes just to follow best practices. Echo my name is John. You are going to see the same command, the same output. The input you gave just was outputted on the terminal. My name is John. You see my name is John. Let's say my name is Frank. My name is Frank. My name is Dave, etc. So it just basically gives it, prints out what you give to it, like garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's what echo does. And then there are some other things that you can actually do, right? So let's say right now I want to create another file, and then I want to add some content to that file, right? Let's say I want to edit that file. So you can either just say touch, let's say bash underscore script dot sh. If you ls, you are going to see that the bash script dot sh was created, right? So you can just say, okay, since this file is created now, I would like to write some things into that file, right? So that's where text editors come in. Text editors, right? So to edit some text, right, to put some text into this, now we're going to use some tools, some text editors in Linux, and preferably there are two major text editors rather, and I prefer Vim. But for this, we are going to use Nano just because it's beginner friendly and simple to use. So I'm going to use Nano. So if I say Nano bash underscore script.sh, I'm basically telling the system that I want to edit this file called bash script.sh. Nano is just a text editor. And if I hit enter, you'll basically be brought to this empty page, and that looks weird at first. But you can just start typing in your content here. Right, just type in whatever you want here, and then let's say after you type all these things, you just want to save. But obviously, let me just edit this to look more responsible. So I just say my name is John and I love teaching Linux. Right, so let's say I just give this and I want to save this now, similar to what you do on Microsoft Word and other text editors, right? It's very similar to it. So I can just say Ctrl S to save, Ctrl S to save, and then Ctrl X to actually quit this page. So we now have a file, and then we have some text in that file. But how do we view the text that we just created? Let's say we don't want to use Nano anymore, we just want to view the text that we created. Here comes another command, and that command is cat, C-A-T, cat, and then the name of the script, the name of the file. So if you say cat bash underscore script.sh, you see my name is John and I love teaching Linux. So this basically prints out the content in a file. Yeah, so cat prints out the content in a file. And now to still explain that, because some people still have that misconception of cat and then ls, right? Cat just prints out the content of a file. It works with files, prints out the content of a file, only works with files. So caution here is that it only works with files, right? But ls, on the other hand, basically lists the contents of a directory. Yeah, you get the gist, right? So that's just the difference between cat and then ls, because some people just have that misconception a lot of times, right? So let's see now the next command. I would like to clear up the screen now since I'm already at the bottom. And yeah, so to clear the screen, just type the command clear, or you can use Ctrl+L, right? Ctrl+L. And I like using Ctrl+L because it still saves up my work. You can see it's still here. Ctrl+L is still here. But if I type in clear, that means everything is gone, right? I can't recover them back unless I just get the commands I used previously. And that brings me to another one, and that command here is history. So let's say you've been typing commands, right? You type a lot of commands, and then you want to view the commands that you've typed so far. Possibly you forgot the command and want to see it again. You can type in history. And history is a command that brings out all the list of commands you've run previously. So as you can see, I think I've run 1200 commands so far, more than 1200 commands so far. But that's actually little. I don't really use this system that much. So yeah, you get the gist. It just prints out the commands that you've run. So that's how it works. So just you can write that down if you want. I'll attach a cheat sheet for you to go and read after this tutorial. So let me clear up my screen, and then if I ls, I have my bash script.sh, right? So right now I would like to create another folder, right? So yeah, this still brings me to another concept I would like to explain, right? So you can actually, folders are just containers. As I said, they are just containers, and one folder can also hold multiple folders, right? Because they are just containers. And then these folders can each have their own files as they wish, but just get the concept. Folders can hold multiple files and other folders, right? So right now I'd want us to create I'd like to create a new folder inside this learn DevOps folder, right? So if I say, to do that, you can say mkdir, let me be generic, new folder. And if I ls, you'd see I have a new folder here created, just named new folder. And let's say I would like to copy this file, bashscript.sh, into new folder.sh, new folder, rather, the file, the directory. I could just do that simply with the command cp bashscript.sh, that's the file name, and then I place a destination where I want the file to be stored in, right? To be duplicated in. I can just say new folder. If I hit enter and I ls, you'd see the file is still here. And now let's check if the file was actually, a copy was sent to this folder. So if I say ls new folder, you'd see that, yeah, this folder here has a script called bash_script.sh. So let's now go into the folder. To do that, you can just say cd new folder. To ls, you see that I have bash_script.sh, right? So it's this simple and it's this short. But now let's remove all these files, right? Let's remove them. Say rm bashscript.sh, and then if I want to move, so take a look at this now. Yeah, the moment I run this cd command, you can see that this part here increased from learn DevOps alone that was just above here to learn DevOps / new folder, which means I'm inside the new folder, right? So I just deleted the bash script, and I want to move from this new folder back to the learn DevOps folder, the previous folder, right? To do that, I can just run this command, cd space dot dot. That means that, okay, I want to move a step backward, and if I run this command, you are going to see the new folder, the path reduced back to the previous learn DevOps. So cd dot dot means go move one step back, right? And if I still run this cd dot dot, it's still going to take me a step back again. Let's go back into our cd learn DevOps, right? So I hope you guys understand it to this point. And now let's see ls. I have my bash script.sh and my new folder, but I want to delete this bash script.sh. Sorry, I want to move this bash script.sh, not delete. I want to move this file, no longer copy. I want to move it to a new directory. And then that brings the next command, is mv bash script.sh to new folder. So I'm still similar to this command that you can see here, cp to the new folder. That's the object you want to copy and then the destination you want it to be in. So I can just say move this guy from here, totally take it out and put it inside this folder, and you see that if I ls, the guy is gone. But if I ls new folder, that's list the contents of new folder, you see that bash script.sh is currently here, right? So I hope you guys understand it to this point. Trying to keep everything very simple. Yeah. So now the next command we are going to play with is just the date command. So you can just say date, and then if you hit enter, this basically tells you today's date. Date tells you today's date, right? So it's very straightforward, and yeah, that's how it works. And there are many other commands in Linux. For example, we have the pwd, and if I run that command, you can just see that this is the path to my directory, my current working directory. So people say pwd means print working directory. People say it's actually present working directory. Still means the same thing. The pwd command basically outputs the full path of the directory you are currently on. So if I cd into new folder and I say pwd, you see that the path changed, /home, /john, /learn, etc. So yeah, that's basically how this guy works, right? So simple. And let me clear up my screen. As I said, you can use Ctrl+L to clear your screen if you want to actually retain the list of the commands you previously ran, or you can just do the normal clear, which basically wipes it all off. Yeah, I prefer this for now. Yeah. So right now we have bash script.sh inside the new folder, inside the new folder directory we created. So I want to create 5 other files now, and to do that you can just say touch file 1 file_1 .py, file_2 .sh, file_3 .txt, file_4 .he, and then file_5 .yaml. Yeah. So the reason I want to do this, create this command, right, is to run this command rather, is because I would like to explain some concepts, right? So whenever you're working with files in Linux or any other operating system at all, whenever you're working with files, there's something we call extension, right? There's something we call extension. So you can see in this file, the name is file1.py. So whenever I see py, that means this is a Python script. Yeah, it's a Python script. Whenever I see .sh, it means it's a bash shell script, or just a shell script in general. Whenever I see .txt anywhere, this guy means it's a text file. It's a text file. .ha, I don't really know, just guess this part. The .yaml here is just a markup language. So file extensions basically define what the files are used for. So YAML files name yet another markup language, basically used to write markups, just some scripts, right? Example, to deploy applications to Kubernetes and etc, right? So the file extension defines the use of the file, right? And to run this, we can just hit enter and you just see that 5 files were just created. So ls, you see these files were just created, right? I hope you guys understand to this point. And you can see that we have 6 files here in total. There's another command I want us to run, right? The final command for the day before the next tutorial comes out, right? And that command is ls-a. So you are going to see this is the output, right? ls-a basically lists all the files in the directory. It lists them all, even hidden files, right? Because there are hidden files in Linux, and ls-a lists all of them. So you can see this dot here, which signifies your previous folder, and you could not see it here. So any file that starts with dot are basically hidden files, but these are just directories. They are links that link you to back and then to forth. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. More videos will be dropping on Linux, and please don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and then don't forget to share to your friends that actually need this video. Thank you guys, and have a good one. Bye.